All right. All right. There's me, and there we go. Good
Okay,
morning,
I think I'm
Andrew
here too.
Lowen.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Hey, so good to speak with you. There's about a 30-second delay. You know how that is with the
Yep.
streaming world, and so I'm got one Bluetooth earbud in. I'm just going to make sure that all of the mics and everything is coming through, and that people aren't just watching us talk silently here.
Yeah,
So
that's excellent. Good idea.
yeah. So we are live. We're good to go here. How exciting. So welcome everybody. Good morning. My name is Matt Johnson. I'm the worship pastor here at Grace Church in Rupert, Idaho. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. And I want to give a shout out to the Grace Church family and all of our followers online. We're so glad that you are with us today. And joining me is my very special guest, Andrew Lowen. He is the designer of Deliverance, which is the highest selling and best rated religious themed board game in the world. So, Andrew Lowen, we're so glad you're here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Oh, you put it like that. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Very humbled that Deliverance has the success that it does, and I believe that it's a symptom of, um, you know, Hollywood ruining every single favorite fandom that ever existed. So people just, like me, are getting tired of that. So.
Well, I'm thrilled to speak with you. And of course, right behind me, everybody, is Council of the Fallen. This is the new expansion of Deliverance, and it is on
Mhm.
Kickstarter live right now. There are only 4 days left of the Kickstarter campaign. And
Yep.
so you can pledge your support and you can buy a copy of the game and the
Yep.
expansion right now on Kickstarter.com. I want to make sure to say that. Shout out also to everybody on the Deliverance Insiders. We've got a big community of the Deliverance Insiders. People are passionate about this game and what it means. And so shout out to all of you who are watching. We're glad that you're joining us today. And we're going to dive in today because I want to let people know I came to know who you are because of Deliverance. This is
Yeah.
mine right here. Sorry about my chroma key. It's
Your
making it
copy
do
is
shiny
way cooler
things.
looking.
Right. But this is my set, and it's an incredible game. The artwork is exceptional on this game. The gameplay is fantastic. The story is amazing. This game gets top marks from me. Top marks all the way around. And
Thank you.
that's how you came onto my radar, is because I became acquainted with this game. And as I became more excited about it, more enthused about it, I I wanted to dig into more about where this came from. And so that's when I started to stalk you on Facebook and
Yeah.
things like that. I shouldn't say that on live stream. But
That's kind of what we do.
you gotta, if you're gonna interview somebody, you need to do research on them. And like I said, I was passionate about Deliverance, and so I wanted to get to know your story. And boy, there's a lot of story there. And so, and not only that, what really tipped me over the edge of I've got to speak to this man. What really tipped me over the edge was that the Kickstarter campaign for Council of the Fallen, the new expansion of Deliverance, it launched. And at that time, the goal was to raise $75,000 for the publishing of this game within 30 days. And
Mhm.
I pledged my support. I bought my publishing of the Everything New, so I'm excited to get that when it comes. But not only did you reach $75,000, you reached $75,000 in 49 minutes.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
And that is amazing. That's incredible. And to date, I mean, just to give people a taste of the success of what this campaign has done, I would love for you to share with us what the pledging to date has been and how many days
Mhm.
are left of the pledge, and just so that people can get involved right now.
Yeah. So let me just looking over here at the refresh. I just
He's getting
refreshed.
us live numbers.
We have 377,000, just over $377,000 raised right now.
Come on,
Yeah.
$377,000 for the
Mhm.
expansion. And I don't know much about these things, but my read on things is that an expansion never does as well as the original.
Well, it's very interesting because the what I in essence I made an expansion that is a big box that almost doubles the content of what you will find in the base game. And for most people, paying, you know, $89 for a board game is crazy talk. It's one of those things. It's like Monopoly only costs 30, Catan only costs, 50. And why in the world is this $100 almost, And so then on top of that, I'm asking people to pay another $80 for the expansion. So if you're a brand new, never heard of Deliverance before, and you want all the fancy things, you're going to pay about $150 for all of the, the gameplay content. And then, there's all of our cool cosmetic stuff, which you can, cost quite a lot more. And it's like, wow, that's a very tall order for someone, especially someone that finds out about this thing and is like, oh, this is really cool. Whoa, it's 150. I wasn't planning on that, And so I was a little concerned when we hit the launch button. I was concerned that all of my fans would back the expansion and no one else. And I'm like, well, this is, I really felt strongly that God is leading me to do this in this way. It is not what people call a standalone expansion. So a lot of the time, in board games, you'll have big chunky expansions like this that are able to be purchased on their own, that don't require the base game's components to play. And that's how a lot of the time people discover new games. But for me, I'm like, I have a lot of Deliverance fans that really, really love the game, that are interested in diving even deeper and playing more. And we're going to do an expansion that requires the base game. And what I've been very pleased to find is that about half of our backers are people that have either backed at the what we call the deluxe base game. It's an $89 pledge tier that only includes the original base game at like what we call our second edition. So you have some people there, about 5% of our backers. Then another 16% of our backers grab the gameplay bundle with the base game and the expansion. And then another 16% of our backers backed everything all in, like they want all the things. And that altogether adds up to about 1,000 people that backed the base game, in addition to people that exclusively wanted the expansion content and whatever, because we've sold about 5,000 copies of the big chunky Deliverance. So it's really cool to see how people are just so passionate about this project, and that passion has kind of bled into brand new people that had never heard of it before, and they make up about half of our backers right now. So
Yeah.
it's an incredible thing.
Well, it is incredible, and I want to circle back to that, because people need to know about the success of Deliverance. But there's also a large number of people watching, and I don't understand. I'm not one of these people, but there are some people who are not excited about an awesome board game. I am excited about an awesome board game, and especially Deliverance, because we're going to get into that. But the bigger story here, this is the reason I wanted you to get on here, is because your story of Deliverance and how it came about, and in your personal life, that's a story that people need to hear. Because and I teased that our topic today is going to be the power of obedience. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about that is because in American culture, where I live, where you live, obedience is not an ideal that we pursue. It's not an ideal that we strive for. American ideals are things like self-reliance and, stand on your own 2 feet.
Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
Sure. And we have songs like "You Can Go Your Own Way," right? And being a trailblazer, that is something that's an American ideal, right? But the Bible shows us that obedience to God is huge and is very, very valuable. Matter of fact, the prophet Samuel told King Saul that obedience is better than sacrifice. And that's something that in America, especially, I think we get all kinds of twisted up in, is we just have this thought of, oh gosh, if I just sacrifice enough, if I just give up enough, if I just burn the candle at both ends enough, that I will see the reward for that. And I think that that we really struggle with that in American culture. And the Bible shows us that obedience to God is more valuable, is of higher value, and will yield a greater reward in your life than sacrifice. And so this is what I wanted to talk with you about, because there's people who need to hear this story. So I just want to open the door for you to share anything from your personal life, the journey of Deliverance, everything that you want to share that leads us to this point, because I want people to understand what it means when you say yes to the call of God.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. So let's start with the end from the beginning. Is that what is Deliverance? Deliverance is an unashamedly Christian product that is made with excellence, that a Christian person is, I'll use the term proud, maybe not the same way that the devil would use it, but is proud to share. So maybe another way I'll put it is they're not embarrassed to share it with other people. Most oftentimes Christian products are, and this is slightly, there's some outliers that you can point to. I think The Chosen did a really great job. I think that there are other Christian board games that are kind of starting to enter
Oh,
into the mix
I
that
had
do
the big
well.
wide Bible trivia on my coffee table. It was a fun little card game.
Yeah, but at the same time, like it's kind of embarrassing when you're just in a group of friends. You're just a normie. I know you're a worship pastor, so you're perfect all the time. I'm sure that
Oh,
you're not a sinner like me.
listen.
But it's one of those things that like when you're just trying to uh, hang out with your buddies and you've got people of all different, we'll say, religious beliefs and including some people who are very anti-religious for one reason or another. You're just trying to
Listen,
sit
we
down at a
love
table and
everybody.
yeah. Well, it's like when you sit down at a table to share a meal, you don't cut the turkey into shapes of crosses and, bake cookies in the shape of crosses and whatever, like you just make food and you hang out. And so like when you play a board game, it's kind of the same. It's about the same level of intimacy as sharing a meal. And that's really, over the kitchen table, over the dining room table. That's kind of how the gospel spread from house to house in the first century. And that's kind of how it spreads today, where people share a meal together. They have an intimate, discussion where it's like, I know we have different beliefs, but they, it's like food can bring you together
Wow.
regardless of belief, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so do board games.
Yep.
It's a very intimate manner of engaging with someone because and I've many times I've been like the butt of a joke. You've got like a priest, a pastor, an atheist, and a Protestant or whatever, a Protestant Christian just sit down at a table together, or lots and lots of other versions of that. And you can find all the things that you disagree about are irrelevant at the table because you're focusing on what you do agree on, and you're building relationships and you're knitting together friendships and other things like that around a table. And that's, to me, that's the power of modern day board games, is that they kind of in some ways kind of feel like a video game on a table, without requiring any technology at all. And they allow you to kind of strip away all of the technological, I don't know, blocks, in our lives.
It can be a
And
generational gap for sure. There can be a
right.
generational gap that is bridged with playing a board game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there are people like in Gen Z, it's very common. About a third of Gen Z is nervous to order their own food at a restaurant. They'll actually have their parents or their friends order for them because they're too nervous to talk to a waiter. But they will slay demons by the righteous power of God at a table. And, it's so funny. And you'll see who they are, and they start to feel comfortable in their own skin when they're doing that. And it's just really cool to see how that happens. And so board games are a very useful medium. And I didn't understand this until like I actually started working on the game and started playtesting with people. And I realized all of my play tests before the game was actually released they became much more than actually play tests. Like I started to hear people's testimonies.
Wow, come on.
Hear people's stories, and there were people that would just pour themselves out before me. It's like, I didn't know you before you sat down at this table an hour ago. And now I'm either hearing about all your tinfoil hat theories about how you saw an angel, or about how you are a homosexual and you were rejected, and this is always been very difficult for you. But it's
so
cool
sad
that you're playing this Bible game that is actually really interesting. And
Yep.
It's like I met you an hour ago.
Yep.
We're having these conversations, and like,
let me ask you something.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but don't you think that people are hungry for relationships, real, authentic relationships in our culture right now? And
Yes,
that's what
absolutely.
we're doing here.
Yes, in fact, it is more. I would say, when you look at. So, have you seen the movie? It was with it was about Chuck Smith and the founding of Calvary Chapel. That was a pretty recent movie. I believe it was called Jesus Revolution.
That's it.
Okay, so I am really, when you watch a movie like that. So what happened in Calvary Chapel? The reason Calvary Chapel. Actually, I was a wrestler. Total tangent, but I wrestled, and in Southern California. And I went to a wrestling camp at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. I did not realize it was a church. I thought it was a school for people who like to thrash other humans. They had one of the best wrestling teams in the nation,
Awesome.
and like top 5 in the nation, and they were incredibly skilled, and I had a very violent time at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. And so that's when I'm like 16, and then I realized Calvary Chapel is actually a church, and it's like this huge movement, and there are like 4 or 5,000 of these churches around the world. And then I realized, I listened to Pastor's Perspective with Pastor Chuck
Smith,
and
right?
Yeah, Chuck Smith and Don Stewart at the time, and so I saw this movie, and then I finally put all the pieces together, all the things that I understood about Calvary Chapel. The short version is that you had all of these hippies that were searching for meaning and purpose.
Yes.
And they were trying to find it through sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And what they had found is emptiness. They were becoming more and more, they were losing pieces of themselves. I remember one time I had a small group leader. His name is David, bless his heart. He, no, but not in the Texan way, not in the Texan, bless your heart, which is actually a curse word, but he was good. He was awesome. He took a piece of tape. He stuck it to my pants and then pulled it, and then stuck it to someone's shirt and pulled it. And then, and each person, he stuck this piece of duct tape to them and pulled it. And it was like, this is, imagine, a person is like a piece of tape, and this is, after whatever 10 sexual encounters, the tape is just not as sticky.
Whoa! And listen to that.
It really made me think about that. And so anyway, all of this is kind of amalgamating together in, after I watched this movie, and I'm really reflecting and on this generation today. They're just like the hippie generation. There are people that have, determined that their purpose for existence in life is to satisfy their sexual desire, or their sin nature of, and their worth is in their gender identity, their the way that they group together. And these things are things that they use to associate with one another and find safe spaces where they can just be accepted for who they are. And they what they are going to find is that anything outside of Jesus Christ crucified, buried, and resurrected, your identity in Christ, that is the thing that fulfills that hole inside you. And all of these people that are seeking after anything outside of that, but in particular, there is a strong, solid group of people that are finding meaning. They're trying to find meaning in their gender identity. It's not sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's whatever it is in place of that. And what I'm finding, because I deal with people like this all the time with a board game, it, like you said, it bridges the gap. I'm a millennial. I'm 39 years old, so I'm like maybe on the older side of the millennials, and I
tell people my birth was the highlight of 1985. So
yes, yeah, Super Mario came out. It was a good year, So I felt like whenever I sit at a table with a person like this, they're kind of like uncomfortable with me because they know I'm a Christian and I'm a whatever. But then about 5-10 minutes in, they're just having fun, and all of that is just and I'm purposeful about I don't even use pronouns. I just the ones that I use are you and I, and then I use the name they gave me and whatever. I want people to feel comfortable at my table, and we and before long they're slaying demons by the righteous power of God and praying to cast down strongholds, and reading Bible verses and saying, wow, this is such highly thematic and appropriate flavor text that you included in this game, and other things like that. I've had many experiences with Satanists and Wiccans and atheists and agnostics and all manner of people that have just enjoyed the game and reflected afterward and said, wow, I read more Bible playing your game in the last hour than I have in the last 20 years. I didn't even know the Bible said this. This is pretty cool. And they stop and they actually start reading the Bible verses, like the prayer cards. One of the mechanics in the game is prayer, where you have to pray against these strongholds, and you cast down evils that kind of bleed into the spiritual realm from the mortal realm around you. And they you draw a prayer card because prayers are always answered, right?
Come
So
on.
you draw a prayer card, and it has a Bible verse on the back that actually relates to what the ability of the card does on the front.
Yeah,
So
and when
there's
we're playing, me and my wife, me and my son and my wife, my friends, when we're playing, I make them read the card out loud before they get to see what's on the prayer card. I make them read it
yeah,
because that's what it's all about. Like, this game is grounded in the Bible, and it is
right,
grounded in powerful principles like prayer is a powerful weapon against the strongholds of darkness. It's
right.
absolutely scriptural. And so I just love that you did that. So please tell us more about the prayer cards and
Yeah. Yeah, so the idea is that they so I wanted to make it so that the Bible felt approachable but also not required reading. So when I designed the game, so when I designed the game like with the gameplay in mind, so the ideal gameplay, how would you behave if you wanted to win? And that was the only thing you cared about. And so when you have like a very meaningful decision of like, should I, I'm Michael the Archangel, should I smite that demon over here? Or should I pray to try to get rid of that darkness card? I'm really not sure which way to go. Well, the back of the prayer cards, each prayer card has a different Bible verse on the back. And like I said, the Bible verse actually is relevant to what the other side of the card does. So if you need something that is healing or damage or something else, you can actually read the back of the prayer card and kind of discern what the front might do. It's like,
it's your
there are a
clue.
million examples, right? So it's a clue, and it actually kind of encourages people to read them for the gameplay, but it's not required. So you don't have to read for the gameplay. You can just say, all right, I'm using a pray action, and you just grab the card, and it's like, oh, this one says deal 2 damage to something or whatever. Great. That's gameplay information, and you don't have to care about the Bible verse or whatever, but then it's there for you to, if you want to tie those two things together, right? And so it's there's this kind of low key incentive to memorize all the backs of the prayer cards because then you know what cards are coming, and
I don't
it
have that
works
mind. I
beautifully.
cannot do that. That's way
Yeah,
too much for me.
yeah, me either. I'm like, what does this card do again? I mean, it says like it's the golden rule, like do unto others as you would have others do unto you, and like it's got to be positive for me and someone else, right? And it's like, oh, cool, I get to do these cool things. So, yeah, so it's a pretty cool system, but
And so this came from somewhere, right? Like,
yes,
deliverance came from somewhere, and because I watched previous interviews that you've done, and I would love for our audience, because I'm just going to make an assumption that you're connecting with people who have never heard of you before, and
right.
I feel like it's important to hear where this really came from. Why did you decide to start Deliverance? And please, I finish whatever you were going to say, but I would love to hear that.
No, this is great. A great way to move. So I am a gamer. When I say I'm a gamer, I am a try hard professional gamer. I was actually a professional Hearthstone player, which is a video game that came out that I would it was very helpful. I made like $400 a week to teach people how to play, how to master this game. I wrote articles and that kind of thing. And that was professional at the time, right? Before the rise of Twitch TV and everything. And so I was a semi-professional poker player. I put 24,000 hours into a single character in World of Warcraft. That is, if you add all the days and hours played together, it was over 24,000 hours of me sitting in a chair being
Commitment.
awesome on like some, yeah. And so that's 985 days if you stack those hours back to back. And that was in about an 11-year period. And so I spent close to 3 years out of that 11 years in a chair. Somehow also graduated college, somehow also got married, and
Have a beautiful family. It's awesome.
yeah, I have 7 children now. So yeah, it's pretty wild. But then so I October 1st, 2015, I felt the Lord calling me to fast from games. So when what we do is like once a year at least. It's kind of our mid. I don't know. I was asked one time if I was fasting for Lent, and I was like, well, it was in October, and they're like, well, okay, so you're mid-season Lent fast, or you're mid-year, second Lent. I was like, okay, yeah, I guess so. So we chose 40 days of time to lay down something that we thought about all the time.
Wow.
And So, and it was video games for me because that was what I thought about all the time. And the idea for us was when my family is when you lay something down like that, you're gonna think about it. And when you think about it, that's your clue to pray. Like that's like the indicator. It's like a switch is flipped of like, oh, I must pray now because I've been thinking about that. And sometimes it's like, Lord, help me be strong. Other times it's like, okay, Lord, I thought about the thing again, and you just come before the Lord whenever you think about the thing. And I pray a lot, right during when, especially this particular fast. But then at the end of that fast, so I laid video games down entirely. I didn't watch anything on YouTube. I didn't play any video games at all. And I felt the Lord calling me to give video games up by the end of that fast. And I was brought to a point in my relationship with the Lord that I was like, okay, if you're going to ask for this and I give it to you, you will replace it with something better. I had enough faith to say, I trust you, God. Don't see everything, but I do believe that by giving this to you because you've asked me for it, that you're going to give me something better. And so I did. And when that happens, so October 1st, 2015, I quit video games cold turkey. And when you quit video games, you it's like there's no greater way to like insert dopamine into your head other than like maybe drugs. It's and that they would rival video games maybe. So I felt the world was far too slow after I stopped playing video games. In fact, the only thing I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's one of the things I do regularly. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt.
I know,
That
and
was
I don't have the connections for this, but you've got to get on Joe Rogan. I think that would be a fun conversation because I
Yeah.
listen to him probably too much. Shout out Joe, but like he's a jujitsu guy. Like he loves.
We only live about
passionate.
an hour from each other too. So
Man, come on.
yeah.
I wish
Yep.
that you two could connect. I don't have his number, so
Yeah. Well, if you're listening, Joe, then hit me up.
there
You
you
can find
go.
me. Yeah. So one day when I become more interesting, and maybe he'll want to have a conversation with me. So, but yeah, it's so I was able to find some solace in working out because that you get that dopamine rush, but otherwise it was like I searched so like all over for ways to kind of fill the need that I had of jumping into a fantasy world and then going to kill a dragon or whatever with all my buddies. And so we started reading books, and this was like before Audible. So I wrote before I got into Audible. So we got a Kindle. We bought actual physical books, which is weird, but I read lots. At this point, it's weird to read a physical book when you can just read it on a screen. But we read through the entire Lord of the Rings out loud. So when you're reading, by the way, it's like when you read, you can just your brain fixes all of those errors that you make, and it makes sense of the things that you're reading. But when you read out loud, it slows you down by like to 10% of what you were doing before, because I have to understand it and my wife has to understand it too, who I'm reading to. So we read the entire Lord of the Rings, we read the entire Wheel of Time, we read probably 100 books in the course of like 6 months. And we got into board games, and that's kind of how we did that. And I immediately gravitated into the big, thick, fantasy experiences and whatnot. And I encountered a big problem. So as a Christian, you kind of have to set your morality aside in some ways. You step into this world of this fantasy world where like being a warlock that uses voodoo and sucks a soul out of a squirrel to power his demon Voidwalker, which is a good guy, is a normal thing. Well,
And to be celebrated in this game, like, yay,
yeah,
I just did this.
you're just as good as like the paladin. It's like, oh guys, hang on a second. I just have to power up my demon horde or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that you must compromise. You must set your faith aside, and there are people that can kind of do that, where they will say, yes, this is something that is not real, and in real life, yes, magic is bad, but in this game, the rules of this universe say that magic is not bad. So we're just kind of gonna compromise just a little bit, and I know that it's not real, right? So like, you know, playing Call of Duty and you're shooting people and whatever, it's like you're not really shooting people in real life. You can set that aside, but I mean, there's something that violence or, you know, whatever can like does to people. And in the same way, and I, you know, I'm a huge fan of movies like Saving Private Ryan, and you know, I don't have anything against violence, you know, but I think that there are things that you know, your mind is affected. And I was just like, why isn't there a game out there that I can just play and not have to compromise on the quality of the gameplay? You know, I just want it to be the absolute best game ever, and also not have to compromise on my faith. You know, and that just felt like something that it just didn't exist. And so what we would do is, if like, you know, we'd buy a game, we start to play, and then we'd see, you know, hidden occultism and other things like that. We started to actually stop playing those games, and I didn't want to give them to anybody. We would actually start to throw them away. It's like every once in a while we'd throw them away. And I remember this one experience I had, this $120 game that I bought. I was super excited about it. Spent 2 years following it on Kickstarter, and then I received it, and it was like super occultic, very, very occultic. I was like, man, you know, I was just so frustrated. And I actually, to my shame, I yelled at God. I was like, after throwing it away, I looked up to the sky and shook my fist and was like, God, you are the king of the universe, the master of all intelligence and omniscient and whatnot, like omnipotent, omniscient. Why? And you've given men the ideas that they have. Like, why don't we have a game that is awesome, that is just best in class, that also doesn't require any compromise whatsoever, that allows me to do everything I wanted to do in a game, and also to celebrate my faith in a manner that just doesn't shame you, you know? Why doesn't that exist? And I was very mad about it. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was saying, like from the prophet Isaiah, here am I, Lord, send me. And God was like, he didn't strike me with lightning. And he said, okay, son, are you finished? Let's get to work, you know? So I started on this. So my wife sent me out on a run, and I hate running, but I read through Daniel chapter 9.
Yeah.
So yeah, you knew things were bad if my wife made me want to run.
My pastor is a serious guy, and he goes on his runs, and my hat is off to him. And it's like, that's good for you. I'm so happy for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So like for me, like I couldn't ever enjoy running because I came from wrestling. And so you would run to be in shape, and you had to run, you know, for me 6-minute miles. And that was just what I did. So I couldn't not run hard, and couldn't actually enjoy running. And so anyway, my wife kicks me out of the house and makes me go on a run. And I start thinking about this Bible passage that I read very recently at the time, which was Daniel chapter 9. And Daniel chapter 9 is all about Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, telling this story to the prophet Daniel about, you know, as soon as you started praying, Daniel, you started praying and fasting, I was sent to you immediately, as soon as you started praying. But the prince of Persia, which is some demon or some fallen angel that's out there that you know is like big and strong, withstood me for 21 days. And so Daniel fasted 3 whole weeks, got no answers, but evidently Gabriel was sent immediately. And this prince of Persia, if there was any guy that had a hall pass, you know, heaven's hall pass would be Gabriel, the messenger of God, the guy that's like, hey, Mary, you're going to have a baby and his name will be Jesus. Like that guy was delivering a very important message. And he, you know, he was, you know, he was like, probably like, hey, demon, let me pass. And then this fallen angel, which by the way, I believe demons and fallen angels are the same. I know that some people think that they're different, but this prince of Persia said no, and actually stopped him from delivering a message for 3 weeks. And then we're told in the same chapter that Michael the archangel, everyone's favorite archangel, had to come and assist Gabriel with this demon or the whatever, and then he was able to break away, deliver the message. And then he has to go back because evidently Michael is not able to handle this guy. So Gabriel has to go back and help Michael deal with him. and then finally with their combined powers like Captain Planet, they'll beat him. And but then later this other prince called the Prince of Greece is going to come, and they have to prepare for him. It's like, oh my goodness, like it seems like the angelic realm is not at all like I thought it was. It seems as though angels with all of their might are still outclassed by fallen angels, or in some way, in some cases. And this Prince of Persia is a really nasty one. And if it took Gabriel and Michael with their combined forces over the course of probably months of time to beat this guy, that is a story that is very intriguing. And so I started to think about what really kind of how the spiritual war and spiritual realm was like activated around us. And we've got angels. We just assume angels are dominant over demons because there are, in the Bible says that there are 2/3 of the angels are good and 1/3 of them fell. So you figure that the third that fell would be far outclassed by the 2/3 that are there. But it's like, it almost feels like the forces of darkness can have their way in a lot of in a lot of human lives. Like when you look at the Bible, you have very specific examples, but this one really started to toy with me because, like Job, Satan had to ask for permission, but there wasn't anything about this Prince of Persia, having to ask for any kind of permission. In fact, it would have been the opposite, where, God said, hey, go deliver this message. And then Gabriel, he knew what Gabriel had to go through in order to deliver it. But, he didn't freeze the demon in place like he could have or whatever. And so that was very intriguing. And that's where Deliverance came from. I just started to kind of put the pieces of a highly desired board game that I wanted to play with this incredible story. The more I thought about it, the more my mind was exploded about what the spiritual realm is like around us, and I think about, what demons can do and what fallen angels can do that is biblical. And it's like, yeah, we definitely need to remain close to Christ. We don't need to fear them, but at the same time, it made for really great material, that I thought would be interesting.
Yeah,
And then
the
7 years
spiritual
later,
world.
here's Deliverance.
One more time, please.
Oh, and then 7 years later, here is Deliverance.
Yes, exactly. Well, and just like you said, the spiritual world is something that should be taken seriously. Like the Bible says that we have the victory in Christ and these things, but the Bible also tells us to flee from temptation. And why is that? It's because temptation is real and we have the capacity to give into it. The only thing that makes it what it is because it's alluring. And so absolutely, the spirit world deserves to be taken seriously. And just while we're talking about this, I'm so glad that Deliverance takes itself seriously. And where you see that the most is not just the content, but the artwork. Like, it's not, I appreciate games that are cartoonish, but this is not that. This takes itself seriously because the premise is that these things are factual, that these things are real, and it's grounded in reality. And the artwork shows you these things are grounded in reality because the spirit world is a real place. And I'm really glad that Deliverance approaches it that way because it makes it easy to sink yourself into the game and to be imaginative as you're playing it. So absolutely, that's awesome. So what was the next step that happened for Deliverance? Because again, we're talking about the power of obedience, and you said yes to God.
Yep.
When God told you to do something, you chose to say yes to that. That's powerful. And what I want people to see is when you say yes, when God tells you to do something and you say yes to it, He is going to do the work. It wasn't Andrew Lowen who made Deliverance so successful. It was the hand of God. I firmly believe that. And so please tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's in a funny way, I feel like I get to be a fan of the game as much as everybody else, even though I made it. Yes, my hands were the hands that wrought a lot of the game, and I hired the artist and gave them direction. And my wife is kind of our art director. She gives direction and whatnot, but it's the hand of the Lord that puts it together. And so I feel like I just get to be a fan with everyone else. Like, isn't this game awesome, everyone? It's like, yes, I know I made it, and that would normally be a very conceited things to say, but I really don't feel like it came from my genius, if that makes sense. It was absolutely the hand of the Lord. So, how like okay, so Solomon and David, they were given plans, and Moses before them, they were given plans for the tabernacle and then later the temple, right? And God was very, very specific. He's like, the pomegranates will go over here. This will be inlaid with gold. That will be made of cedar, and it will be yay size. And the cherubim will be like this and facing like that, and their wings touching. And none of that happened with me. God was just like, okay, here's a little string, and you can start to pull on it and unravel this gigantic ball of yarn that's going to have knots. And I'm going to make it a challenge for you to figure out what the game is even supposed to be like. And so we ended up, for example, we started the game. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this epic angels and demons and whatnot. What happened at the very beginning, God, as I was thinking about it and pondering on it, God, I felt like an angel was sent and just deposited like a penny in, like a penny into a piggy bank. He deposited a thought into my head about the system of like kind of the darkness cards and the tactical combat that happens in the game, and the balance that you have to strike between fighting the demons and praying down the darkness, as well as kind of the prayer cards. So that system was deposited into my head, and it has not changed. So the actual, what the cards say and other things like that has been changed, and a lot of other things have. But that system was just given to me as like, okay, this is an essential deposit we need to make very early on. Here's kind of how the game's going to work, and there's your the end of the string. You start pulling now, and
Daily bread, man. Give us this day our daily bread.
Yes, and so I felt like, and what I later saw in Proverbs, it says it's to the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it's to the glory of kings to search out a matter.
Mm-hmm.
And God was like, you're going to have to do a lot of searching and a lot of development. I can't wait, when we get to heaven, and then they're like, oh, by the way, the actual game is like this. And Michael didn't look anything like that. He had eyeballs all over, actually, and that kind of thing, right? So it's it was I felt I struggled. I never designed a game before, but I knew what an excellent experience was in gaming. So I knew what it was, and I knew what it wasn't. And so the first time it took me,
you knew the language, but you'd never written a book.
That's correct. And so in a way, it was kind of like C.S. Lewis, where C.S. Lewis was an atheist until he was 27 years old, but he was a literary expert. And when he became a Christian, he was able to write Narnia and Mere Christianity and Screwtape Letters and all of those things.
Man.
And
life-changing.
I totally, yeah. And because he had all of this expertise, and so for me, I have all this expertise in gaming, and I read my Bible every day, and I knew, I combined those two things in an interesting way that have never been combined in that way before. And so, I kind of felt like that, where God leveraged my expertises and in order to help me kind of create this thing. So, but yeah, it's, I don't know what you, if you want me to expand on any of that, but, it was a seriously difficult journey, very lonely, very challenging, because it's like if you invented calculus. Imagine, there were evidently two people that invented calculus at separate locations at the same time in history, and independently. It's very, very amazing. God was probably like, you kind of both need to know this in order to spread it correctly. But so imagine that you are the only one in the world that understands calculus, and trying to explain calculus to your mom. It's like, they don't get it. Like they might understand some, but not just not to the level that you can have an effective conversation with them. Right.
And it's not just that. You're passionate about it. You're excited about it, and get excited about it. Come on. This is great. Right. And they're like,
it's like, what is this? It's like hieroglyphics right now. So yeah, and that was a real challenge. And so God used this game on my life. In our process of being sanctified as Christians, God often uses our circumstances and our work and whatnot. Well, he definitely used this game on me personally, but he used it on everyone around me too. My wife was my essential core partner We eventually started joking, calling Deliverance the other woman, because I would talk about it so much, and I would, obsess over it, and it's like date night, but all I want to talk about is deliverance, and and she has to weather that and be patient and whatnot, and it's so finally we found ways to generally make it happen, but it was a really really tough thing to make. The first prototype we put together, it took me about 6 months, and I was taking my time. I was using 3x5 note cards and writing things on them and using different colored pens and whatnot. And then at the end of like a 6-month period, and I borrowed a bunch of copies of, got all the cubes from Pandemic Legacy Season 1. And then I had cubes to use. And then I grabbed all my miniatures from War of the Ring, and I had, dwarf. All right, this dwarf is going to be a fallen seraph, and, stuff like that. So finally put it together. We played for 2.5 hours and we died, and it was not fun. It was horrible. It was like, I'm pushing cubes around a board, and a dwarf with an axe just, defeated me. This is dumb. And, we were supposed to fight through 6 battles. So a skirmish was 6 battles. And because you understand the game, it's 2 battles now, right? And my wife was at the very beginning. She was like, "Well, don't you think it should be more simple? Like, what if it was just 2 battles?" I'm like, "No, that's far too simple. It has to be 5." And so anyway, if one battle takes 2.5 hours, you can imagine how long the entire experience would have taken if I would have just said, "Let's publish this now."
Yeah.
So it took much time to, and also agony to, I ripped that thing apart and put it back together a good 5 or 6 times based on everyone's feedback. And it took me 5 years by the time we were actually ready to bring it to Kickstarter. And at that time, it was still not done. It took us 2 more years after we were funded, which was a real miracle. We funded $314,000 on our first Kickstarter.
Come on.
So
good.
Yeah. And I have a story about that, by the way. If God tells you to do something, he's going to provide you the resources, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about obedience. So it's really kind of cool to test the Lord in what he tells you to do. If you just do it, you're like, "God, I don't know how you're going to deliver." In fact, I can say in my personal experience, I have always thought God would deliver in one way. It's never worked out the way I thought. Never. But God does incredible things if you just give him the room to work and obeying him. So like the push came to shove in the end when 2018 was turning into 2019 at the end of the year. It was like, okay, we are developed enough that we now need to start on the art. And I don't have the money for the art. At the time, I have, let's see, 4 children, and I'm a relatively young family, and it's like we don't have extra disposable income. So I found the artist, and the artist was like, "Okay, I need to know by like January, so the first month of 2019, I need to know by January, like if I have this job, or if if, like, he's a freelancer, so if I have this work or not." And you were talking about like 30 hours a week is what he needed, or he'll have to find other projects of the work and whatnot. And so it was like, all right, I don't have the money to bring this person on, definitely not to bring this project to completion. So God, you brought us this far, and now you're going to need to act. And I don't have the resources. I don't have the people that I can talk to that have the money to do this. And certainly, nobody wanted to invest into a Christian game. You invest whatever thousands of dollars into this game, and you'll never see it back because nobody likes Christian games. They're not very good. So that was very common. So nobody would invest, and so but God told me, "The silver is mine and the gold is mine. I give it to whom I will." I was
Oh
like,
man.
"Okay, all right." I opened up the Bible, and just those words jumped off the page. It's like, okay, I feel like the Holy Spirit telling me, just God will take care of it. And not 2 weeks later, my in-laws received their inheritance from their parents. The parents pulled a bunch of gold out of a safe that they had been storing for years and years and
Physical
years.
gold.
Physical gold.
Man.
And yes, and turned it into cash, and then split it between their 3 children. And my in-laws received their inheritance, and they decided to use part of that money to pay off our solar bill because we lived in Southern California. We had about $30,000 of solar that that we put on our house. It makes it cheap. It's immediately cheaper at the time than paying an electric bill. And so we got a home equity line of credit, and they paid our home equity line of credit off. And it was like a huge moment. And actually, they didn't know. They had no idea. I didn't realize this, but they had no idea that they were used as the hands and feet of God until a week ago when I told them. So this
What?
was
At the church
2019.
service?
Yeah.
Really?
They
Oh
figured out. I
man, wow, what a
kind of
big
gave my
deal.
testimony. Yeah, I kind of gave my testimony at the church about a week ago, and they learned that they were the hands and feet of God at that time.
Were they
So that
just
was a
bawling?
5-year. Yes, they were all crying. So
So
it was
cool.
it was an incredible thing. We're all crying. But so so God said, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, and I give it to whom I will. He took $30,000 worth of gold
Of
and
gold.
paid off my solar bill. It's like, okay, this is really kind of on the nose, but all right. I kind of put God's word to the test. It was like, God, I will obey you. Just make mountains into roads. And that's what he said he would do. Like Isaiah 49:8, and through about verse 23, that was kind of my guiding light, is like, I will take care of you. All my mountains, you'll find pasture on every barren hill. I will turn my mountains into roads for you. And that kind of thing. It's like, man, sometimes he puts a really rinky-dink janky road that goes all the way over the top of the mountain, and you have to climb, and you have to, dodge falling rocks and whatnot, but God makes a way, and he keeps you safe and all that. So anyway, paid off our solar bill, and we were like, okay, I guess it's going to be $30,000 that we have to invest into this. And my wife and I said, okay, if this even saves one person, if it does the work of the kingdom, we're going to we're going to follow God. And we had a lot of strength. There's a lot of faith, and at that time to just walk that road. It's like, what a big miracle that happened. And so 2 years later, we're $60,000 in debt. So the home equity line of credit had a limit of $50,000. I was at $48,000 on that one. And I took a credit card out that was 0% interest for 12 months or 13 months, something like that. But then after that, it's like 90,000% interest, how those cards work. So that was at a limit of $11,000, fully maxed out. And the date for that was coming in September. And so it's like, okay, we now have to go to Kickstarter. And my wife and I, we would talk on the regular about this. And it's like, if the Lord says you're now 60,000 in debt and you have the money to make the game now, we go to Kickstarter, we raise, $50,000 or whatever. So 40,000 is our funding goal. If we make just enough money to make the game, and then we have to pay off for the rest of our lives the $60,000 that we got ourselves into debt, or for many years, we are okay with that, because we are following what God wanted us to do. We're trying to be faithful. And then we hit the launch button, and we made by the way, I spent the last $6,000 I had on that home. We were at $42,000 or 43,000. And I spent the last $6,000 I had on Facebook ads, because I was a marketer. My profession is that I'm a marketing company, and I know how to use Facebook ads and Google and whatnot. And so the last $6,000 spent on Facebook ads. And then we hit launch, and we raised $141,000 in 8 hours.
Man.
And 300, yeah.
So
and then
cool.
314,000 over the course of the, and the game altogether has raised just over $1 million, actually about $1.3 million with
So
this.
awesome.
Yeah. And so it has been such a miraculous, experience to see the Lord move like that. And so I was just so, like, I was floored. We actually paid off our debt, like, immediately after. It was like, after Kickstarter took its pound of flesh, we got like $290,000 deposited into our bank account. Immediately wrote a check to the bank, and they were like, wow, how did you pay this off in just one go? I'm like, I make board games. And like, yeah, right, drug dealer. Like, what happened?
Right.
This video out, please, out. I'm like on live, and now all my children are are running in. So
Hey,
I
I
just like,
love that you have a big family. You manufactured 3 kids in 5 years. That's impressive after you started all
yep,
this.
yep.
That's amazing. Well, and so the
Yeah,
faithfulness of God, right? That's what we're talking about, is being obedient to God and watching him do his thing.
yeah.
It wasn't your idea. It was God's idea.
It
And he's
was
going to see it
completely
through.
God's idea. It
And
was,
so
yeah, and
just very
mhm,
quickly, because I want to tackle 3 things. I want to talk about how people can be involved. I want to talk
yep.
about where we go from here. And then, but before that, I just want to ask you, where would you be right now if you had not said yes to God? If you had not been obedient to the call of God, where do you think you'd be?
I think I would just be, it's very interesting because there have been several situations where people have had the opportunity to come alongside me and invest or publish the game. Like I thought I didn't I had no intention of publishing Deliverance. I was like, I know what makes a good game. Like you said, I know the art needs to be of a certain quality so that because if everyone thinks Christian games are a joke, I need to show them that Deliverance takes itself seriously, so you should take it seriously too. And so the art needed to be like overproduced and other things like that, right? So um I felt like I am going to wrap this up in a nice little package with a bow and hand it to someone, and they're going to make lots of money and have all the work to do, and I'm just going to get a royalty. And that's not how it worked at all. It was like I already have a business. At the time I had like 3 employees, and now I have 8, and I have a second business with with this Lowen Games and Deliverance and whatnot. And I originally never intended to do that, but it would not exist if I didn't, because every single person that had the opportunity to publish, they turned it down or said, I want to change it into something that will basically corrupt it. It's like,
Wow.
let's make the demons playable characters. Let's make, other things like that Christians just wouldn't feel comfortable touching it. I was like, that's not right. Or, oh yeah, a whole campaign, a story-driven campaign is way too much. Let's just give them like 5 scenarios to just play, and that's enough. It's like, no, that is way less than what it needs. And I knew what it needed, right? And so then there were other people that were like, I want to fund this. A guy wanted to give me $800,000 and help me fund my company and do all this great work. And then it changed to $400,000, and then it changed to 400,000, but you have to pay back everything at 9% interest. And it's like, dude, like this is like if I take this money now, it's going to be like my company later. I just feel like the game won't exist if I do this. And all of the people that had the opportunity to come alongside me, they missed the opportunity. And I felt that if this is something that the Lord is doing, and each time, we prayed and was like, okay, the Lord is giving the opportunity to this person to invest or whatever. Um, they they missed it. They missed it. It's like I feel bad for them, like they missed out on a wonderful opportunity to be involved in something special that God's doing, and they listened to the Holy Spirit and listened to their belly and decided that their belly would win. It's like it was like kind of sad every time. I'm like, I don't feel bad for me. I know God will provide the money. Feel very confident He has on several occasions. And again, with this expansion, like we're going to probably raise $450,000 by the end of this thing, and give or take. And it's like an incredible thing. And I know the money is going to be there because I know that God wants it to happen. And so it's like I just feel bad for these people that they missed an opportunity to actually to do this. And so I think, what would it be like? And actually there was one company that was like, we just want to buy outright the intellectual property you've created. We want to buy it. You won't have any involvement in it. And I open up the Bible, and you know what I open up to? Esau selling his inheritance for a bowl of soup.
Whoa.
Like, oh my goodness. Like I
Thank
just
you,
felt
Lord, for that
horrible.
clarity of direction.
Yes,
Wow.
and it's like if I were to sell this, this is my one chance. This is like my life song, as the musicians put it, right? Like I felt like the Lord giving me this was the biggest thing that I will, other than raising my family and bringing my children to know the Lord, the biggest, most impactful thing I will ever do for the world. And maybe that's not the end case, but it certainly put me on that path. And so I don't know what I would have done. I felt like, just God brought me to a point where I was willing to listen at the smallest little things. Like, what if I just said, no, I want to keep playing video games, but I want to listen to you, but I just am not ready to give those up. What if I said, oh, let's sell off the game, or let's let someone else publish it. It'll be less work for me. I feel, you ever hear saying, I feel like I don't want to do all that work, and it's like, don't listen to your feelings. Don't listen to your heart. It's deceitful and wicked above all things. Who can know it?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes you have to do things that are hard and that are not what you want, and not, you have to go places you don't want to go. And to be faithful to God, I'm now on a mountain that's higher than I've ever been. At the top of a peak, at the conclusion of this Kickstarter campaign, where we will have raised more money than I've ever seen in my life to make this. And I have a huge supporter base behind me, and it's probably peanuts compared to what the Lord has in the future. But those small victories, right? God has me on a path, right? And so I do feel very passionate about where the Lord has me, and that, and just those little bits of faith. I remember actually where this whole thing started with the money was, I remember in California, we were in Southern California. This was around 2009, where we had this condo. Our mortgage was like $900 a month, and we had a $300 HOA payment per month, and that was kind of our bills. And we made together, after taxes and whatnot, about $2,800 a month. And that is not very much in Southern California. Like, that is, you don't have any disposable income, and you might have, no money in the bank at the end of the month. And, you'll eat peanut butter and jelly and top ramen, and so we did not tithe at the time, and we went to this church where we heard this sermon that was like, tithing is like an awkward thing, oh, we don't want to like twist your arm to tithe and whatnot. But like, you people listening to this, you better tithe. That is 10%. And you want God to bless your money before taxes or after taxes. Like, you just tithe and God will take care of you. So let me explain to you how he took care of me. I was negative $300 in the bank, and $1,500 worth of bills were due at the beginning of the month. Our electric bill, our internet, our mortgage. And so I had started my small business and everything, and it was just like so hard. And God, by the grace of God, we barely made it. And I think I had to borrow $600 from my dad, and it was like, it was tough. And I begged the bank for a loan for those overdraft forgivenesses and whatnot. And they ended up making me pay $100 instead of like 380, which is what I overdrafted. And it was like, wow, this is a really difficult position. And I was put in very on like hardcore pressure because of our finances. And the Lord said, you know what? I want you to tithe. It's like, you have been putting money into a sack that has holes in it. You have been, not honoring me. You've said that, the Lord, that what good is it to give to the Lord when I need this for myself? I actually needed money to feed myself. And the Lord said, tithe to me. So what we did was, every single check from that day, we tested God. And the Bible actually says, test me in this.
Yes, it does.
Try me in this, and see if I will not open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing upon you that you won't have room enough to receive it. It's like, well, I am going to test you, God. I am full on putting you to the test because you said I can do it. So I'm gonna pay my tithe. And it will, every single month I am testing you, and I'm watching carefully. And if you mess up, I will notice it because I'm really paying attention. And it's not a kind way to put it, but it's like, God said test, and I am suffering so much, so I'm going to tithe. We never overdrafted again.
Wow.
We lived on somehow less money than we had before, and we had the same things. It was very strange. And that little bit of adjustment when I was 24 gave me just enough faith to say, okay, I trust you, God. You said the silver is yours, the gold is yours. Like, when I tithed, we stopped overdrafting.
Man.
So you are probably able to prove faithful here.
Ah, so
And he
cool.
did.
I love
Yeah.
that.
And
That is so
it's
cool.
the tiniest little bits of obedience. God will use those
I
as
love
moments in
that.
your life.
Well,
Yeah,
and
as
how about
Eliezer
this?
stones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and how about this? Because you had said earlier, like, anyway, if it's a God-sized idea, you can't do it on your own. If it's a
Right.
God-sized idea, you have to have faith, because the only way that it's going to get done is through God. If God is giving you an idea like that, what he's teaching you is he's teaching you faith. Because if it didn't take faith, you could do it on your own. You wouldn't need God.
Right.
And so he's giving you ideas that are only big enough to be accomplished by his mighty hand. And so I just love that so much. And I want to tap on two things really quick, because I know that you got to go. But the
Yeah.
first one is, I want to tell everybody, I want to broaden the scope here a little bit. Deliverance is a game for everybody. It's a game for Christians. It's a game for non-Christians. It's a game for people who don't care about anything about Christianity. Like, and you've done this in a very excellent way, where you designed the game where right out of the gate, the premise is that Jesus died on the cross for the sins of humanity, and he rose the third day, and he is victorious over sin and death. And now you, as an angel, are fighting on behalf of God,
Yep.
in the world. And so there's no controversy about that, because, like you said, everybody who comes to the table, they don't have to agree or disagree with whether or not they actually believe these things. This is the premise of the game. This is the universe
Right.
that we're playing in, and so let's play. And so this is a game
I
for
flipped the
everyone.
script. I flipped the script on everybody, because it's like, okay, you have this, what we talked about earlier about, like, okay, you're a warlock and you're a voodoo, thing, and you've got this demon that's good and whatever, because the concept is called the magic circle. So here's the magic circle. When you step inside this little circle, you are no longer Matt, and I am no longer Andrew. You are Grokthar, the destroyer, and I am Thor, the god of lightning or whatever, the god of thunder. And that's just normal. Like, if you go watch a movie, you do this all the time. So, like, you watch Marvel's The Avengers, it's not weird that there's this giant green guy jumping from building to building, smashing everything in his path. It's not weird that Black Widow can scissor leg take down an alien that is 10 times her size,
I wouldn't want
or
to
3
mess with
times
her.
her size, right? And and Captain America catches his shield every single time he throws it, after it bounces off like 4 different things. It's like Xena Warrior Princess did it first. But that's normal in that universe. Now, if we're watching, let's say, I don't know, X-Files or something, and then Captain America shows up, and it's like, who's this dork in a weird costume throwing his shield? It's like, this makes no sense, because that is a different kind of universe, if you will. So, you've got the Norse gods, where Thor is throwing his hammer and it's coming back to him, and he's calling lightning and smashing bad guys. And you've got, Viking type universe, where when you die, you go to Valhalla, and that's just normal and whatever. This universe, if you will, when you step into this magic circle, it's Christ crucified, buried, resurrected on the third day, and is your commander in chief. You are an elite angel in the army of heaven. So people will say, that are non-Christians, they'll say, well, there is no God, but I mean, I'll play Michael the Archangel. That's kind of awesome. And they'll look at it like, well, I'm not exactly like a follower of Odin, but I'll play Thor, like, I don't take offense at Thor being, actually a religious figure. I just, it's just a game. Right. And so we flip the script on people, because, and everybody always expects, like, well, there's going to be some sort of bait and switch. Like, by mission 5, you've got to go to confession, or you're going to have a permanent penalty, or, you've got to repent and believe in Jesus if you want to pass mission 12, or there's the grandpa from Fireproof that comes out and it's like, son, do you know Jesus, and there's a moment that has to be like a bait and switch, where you put this fun candy coated shell around the game.
When is the preaching going to
is
start?
Really just, that's correct. Yeah. So my intent, actually, original intent, was to make this game for Christians. And if everybody's a Christian that plays it, then in theory, everybody is already saved. So we don't need to save the lost. We're building. I made a game that had the original intent of simply refreshing the heart of the saints. and giving people something that they could play and be proud of and all that. And it turned out that, I didn't need to preach. The game doesn't need to preach. And for that reason. And so it doesn't need to hide anything either. And so it turns out that when you just are, when it's not preachy and it doesn't hide anything and it's an excellent product, that Christians really love it. And then it turns out that non-Christians really love it too, because it's like, it's not hiding anything. So it's actually, when you mention it's the highest rated, it actually does top on boardgamegeek.com, which is the international website for board games. It currently tops every game in the religious category by rating. It's the number one game there.
Yes.
In the entire religious category. So it's the number one Christian game, but it's also the number one of every other religious game. And that is voted, I would say, dominantly by non-Christians.
Right.
So, you've got a lot of Christians that vote and a lot of non-Christians. A lot of people love it. And it's just one of those things that I am happy to be a part of.
Right. Well, and again, the power of obedience. You said yes. You said yes to God, and here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to end by having you tell people how they can get involved, support what's going on, and then if you're okay with it, I want to pray for you before we go. So please tell us about Kickstarter. Please tell us how people can join. We've got 4 days left, so please tell us about that.
Yes. So, first of all, you can go to Kickstarter and pledge for a copy of the game. We have the base game, which was released. We're doing a second printing of that. So this is actually your opportunity. If you want to grab all the things, you can save up to $110 off of what it will cost you. So that's about a third of what you would have to pay. You get to save just to grab all the things. And so you can enter as low as like $89 for a copy of the base game, or you can grab everything for $150, or you can grab, all the gameplay content, or you can grab everything plus all the cosmetic upgrades like metal coins and acrylic glass standees to make your gameplay look really amazing. And that is like $259. So so there are a number of different levels. And then if you are a super evangelist for the game, and you're blessed financially, you can do what we call the Archangel Investor. It's like a $1,777 pledge level. And so we have some people that are just hardcore fans and want to see the word spread and whatnot. And so,
well, and please help people understand, it's not like you're making money hand over fist. Publishing this game costs a lot of money, from the artwork to the printing of the materials and everything like that. And what I love about how you have set it up on Kickstarter, and you said this in other interviews, is you chose this vehicle so that people can pay for what they want. You're not publishing something that is at a higher cost than people want to pay. People are not buying something they aren't actually interested in. It's the best of both worlds. People are buying exactly what they want, and you're not spending money making something that people are not buying. And so it is the best way to do that. I love the model. Yep.
That's right. And then on top of that, my personal income from making what do we have right now? Over $377,000 is $0. I will not make a penny myself. So we're at $379,000 right now. We're almost $380,000. So I've made another $2,000 in this hour being on the interview with you. I will not personally profit a penny from this, because the Lord provides for my household's income through our marketing company. And I don't need a bigger house or I'd like to do things to our property and whatnot, but it's not something that I will use the money for that. The money is exclusively to make the game and to pay the people that like my artist and my
a worker is worth his wages.
Yes. And so we have a lot of wages to pay, but, those that are listening, wondering if I'll just, I've already made $380,000. How could I need more? It's like, well, first of all, you're going to get a product for that. So when you invest into us, we have t-shirts, by the way, that are really cool. We have we're going to have a hoodie here soon and that kind of thing. So, that's something that you'll actually receive rewards for doing that, physical rewards, and of course certainly heavenly treasure. But then I personally won't be taking a chunk of that. So there's nothing that I will be taking and pocketing. So 100% of your money, it's I don't know if I can call it exactly a donation,
It's
but
a pledge of
it's like,
support, man. I love it.
yeah, and you're supporting something that's noble, that actually is spreading the gospel to the four corners of the earth. We are selling into like South Africa and Nigeria and Qatar and Russia and Ukraine and everywhere in European Union, and probably about 55 countries so
Man,
far.
I love it.
Um, Australia, New Zealand, you like Indonesia, Japan, mainland China, various islands in China, tons and tons of places. And so yeah, we probably put let me think, if there are about 200 Bible verses in the game and we sold 5,000 games, what is that? How many Bible verses is that?
Hey, listen, you're going to be able to tell faster than me. And
It's a
then there's
million
all
Bible
the
verses that
yeah,
we
and
put
then
into
there's
the
all the
world.
scriptures that are all over the cover art. The box art
Yeah.
has verses, seems like, on every panel, which is awesome.
Right.
So
Yeah. So yeah, so far we've been able to put over 1 million Bible verses into places that would never open a Bible.
look at
Like
that.
people that would never ever open a Bible,
Hmm.
and and God is using deliverance as something that will be able to help those people, just kind of be exposed to the Bible, and a
Yeah.
lot of we're actually be able to reach a lot of people in the United States. A lot of people have no hope for the generation that like today, like Gen Z. A third of them are LGBTQ, alphabet, and they are trying to again identify with their sexuality and whatnot, and they hate the idea of church, and they're mad at God, and they feel like God doesn't exist, but I also don't like him. And this game, it kind of pierces through the barrier of, or the veil that they've set, um, where they will not open a Bible. They will take offense at if you try to preach at them, if you that kind of thing. But they will play a game where they get to play Epic Angels. That and by the way, the game. I'm glad you mentioned that it does take spiritual warfare seriously. But the game, nothing in the game is done because it's cool. I learned as a Christian maker, you're not allowed to do anything just because it's cool. You have to have a reason. So, for example, like we've written blogs about our angels and why they look like what they do. Like they're in essence good-looking people with two wings, which is not biblical, but it's allegorical for the people playing them, because people are, in heaven are made up of every tribe, kindred, nation, and language, right? So you should have black ones, Asian ones, white ones, everything in between, because that's the makeup of heaven. So the angels represent the people playing them, and the wings are just more of a to kind of help mainstream culture see what it is that they expect. It's like two winged angels is very culturally common. And so we want to do that. If we had godlike angels with eyeballs all over that you would fall down and worship out of fear, it's probably not the type of game that you'd want to play. It's like, this is biblically accurate. Also, I'm terrified and feel like I can't. So anyway,
I love
yeah,
that.
so yeah.
Please, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I thought, I want to make a game that is serious, but at the same time, there has to be a level of levity to the game. It cannot feel like you're actually playing Jumanji, or Ghostbusters. You open up the thing and then all the spirits come out and whatever, and it's like, oh no, we have to put those back. You have to finish the game before, so that you can put the demons back in the box. Like, I didn't want it to feel like that. Like, that's kind of like a Ouija board or whatever. I don't want to get close to that. So
Yeah.
there's this level of separation of like, you're playing a game. You're not like, having a serious, like, if we fail these saints, then, something horrible will happen. It's a game, and it's meant to be used as a tool. Like, a minister can use it as a tool for ministry. A gamer can use it as a tool for entertainment.
Mhm.
And sometimes both, sometimes on accident. We've had people, accidentally lead their friends to Christ by playing this game with them. It's amazing.
It wasn't
It's
on
like,
accident to the Holy Spirit.
right. So, but it's just so cool, so
Yes,
anyway.
I love it. Deliverance, Council of the Fallen is live on Kickstarter right now. You can pledge your support, everybody. You can pledge a monetary support, or you can buy a copy of the game in any of its forms. And you should do that. You should support this. Yep. God is using Andrew Lowen, your team, your game you're publishing to reach the world, like you said, with the hope and love of God with the Bible and its truth, and it doesn't get better than that. So I encourage everybody, please go and support that. And I just want to pray for you, and we'll wrap up.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll
So,
take
Lord,
it.
I thank you for Andrew Lowen and Deliverance and the incredible work that you're doing. God, I pray your blessing on it. I pray that you would continue the work. God, that new vision and new plans would come forward and be successful, and that your word, your hope, your love would reach the world, and that Andrew Lowen and Deliverance would be a big part of that. And I just thank you for it. And Lord, I just quote Ephesians right now that says, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than anything we can ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus forever and ever. Amen." And I just thank you so much, Andrew Lowen, for joining us for this really special interview. I hope everybody can see why I was so excited to speak with you. And let's see where this goes. Let's go forward.
Yep.
It's going to be great.
I'm stoked. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for you guys' support. I mean, it's evident to me that people are jumping on, and I'm very honored to be at the helm of this. I feel like I'm working 2 jobs with 7 children on a roller coaster right now, and it's completely wild. And the Lord is like building tracks one track at a time in front of me, so it looks like I'm about to fall to my death. But God is faithful. God is faithful.
He is faithful. Yeah. Well, let's talk soon, sir. And I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We love you. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you.
God bless.